Let me start with baseball, who continues to butcher this thing, not because they're not going to play, they're going to play. Right? Once you start getting to details of a breakdown, you're going to play. But because of what Blake Snell said and the reaction to what Blake Snell said. First, if you miss Blake Snell, for people who don't follow baseball on a daily basis, he won the Cy Young Award. Honestly, I would guess least known Cy Young Award living in America. Is that fair? Like if I went through and I started naming guys who won the Cy Young Award, you're like, oh, yeah. Like Felix Hernandez, Kingfish, who, of course, finished up his run with the Seattle Mariners. Remember, he won it one year with like a 13 wins or something like that, something crazy, because his all of his metrics were through the roof. He played with a bad team. Felix Hernandez, you know. Blake Snell has not yet climbed that mountain, and he plays in Tampa, whatever. But Blake Snell's an outstanding player. He last year signed a long-term deal, 5 years, $50 million, but the money doesn't really kick in until next year. Here was Blake Snell on Instagram going back to yesterday.
If I'm going to play, I should be getting the money I signed to be getting paid. I should not be getting half of what I'm getting paid because the season's cut in half, on top of a 33% cut of the half that's already there. On top of that, it's getting taxed. So imagine how much I'm actually making to play. You know what I'm saying? And on top of that, so all that money's gone. And now I play risking my life. And if I get the Rona, on top of that, if I get the Rona, guess what happens with that? Oh yeah, that's in my body forever. That damage is not going to be like the damage that was done to my body. That's going to be there forever.
Okay, like listen, all of these are reasonable concerns. I don't think he's being unreasonable, but I do think that there's a disconnect with the rest of society. 36 million people unemployed, many people furloughed, so they don't actually get to claim unemployment. But there's also this disconnect of you don't have a real job, my friend, not just in terms of the level of pay, but in a real job, when that place shuts down, nobody gets paid. And these contracts are not long, not binding. They have what we told you yesterday, a force majeure clause, act of God clause, and anything you thought you were going to make, you weren't going to make. The disconnect continues with guys like Bryce Harper. He told NBC Sports Philadelphia, he ain't lying. He's speaking the truth, bro. I ain't mad at him. Somebody's got to say it. At least he manned up and said it. Good for him. I love Snell. Guy's a beast, one of the best lefties in the game. What part of what he said do you agree with? Is it the giving back money? Because nobody likes giving back money. Everybody I know has gotten a call from the boss, either telling them they're going to, or we'd sure like you to, but we can't ask you to because of the nature of our relationship. Give back some money. Here's Nolan Arenado, far more balanced. Maybe it's because he's a SoCal. Told Ken Rosenthal of Fox Sports, I think he was being honest, just being real. He made a lot of good points. There are some points he made that were true, that are facts. A lot gets misperceived. Trying to get the public to understand us, it's not going to work very well in our favor. I guarantee that if you read the comments, you're probably thinking, you don't have to work 12 hours a day. You're not the only one without a job. You still get paid. These people have a right to say that. That's the big thing. Like, look, I understand, especially, and like Snell is not a veteran. He doesn't have kids in school, in private school, or moving them around the country because switching baseball teams. And, like, look, Blake Snell is going to make a whole hell of a lot of money the next couple of years. That is guaranteed, locked in stone. Like, it's actually worse off for these guys like Mookie Betts and Aaron Judge, who are yet to sign the big deal, and no one knows what the next deals are going to look like because no one knows what baseball financially will look like when we're done. But Rob Manfred said if they don't have a season, they estimate the total loss for the owners at $4 billion. $4 billion. That's not just a, hey, let's start playing together and everybody's fine. Like, do you understand if there's a negative $4 million, yes, you'll save money in taxes in the future. Save money in taxes, right? Because you can write off that loss. But it's actually a real loss, and you got to get to cash positive. You just do. I've read where people say, well, the value of a franchise continues to go up. First of all, that ain't true. who's got the money outside of Jeff Bezos to buy a franchise right now? And why do you have to sell a franchise? Can't you run a franchise and not operate as a loser every time you file your books? So I understand the anger that comes from Major League Baseball and the Players Association, who, look, this happened and they're a year away, but starting to deal with the upcoming expiring collective bargaining agreement, one which, for the first time in history, they didn't feel like they got the better end of a deal. I understand that. And you're just sitting there going like, wait, I'm not making as much money and they want me to take an additional haircut even if we come back and play? How does that make sense? Well, they're not going to have fans in the stands. The luxury boxes can't be sold. The parking can't be sold. The concessions, we still owe people money. The bills still remain relatively the same, only there isn't necessarily the income. This is an evolving situation which requires an evolving partnership between players and owners. Look, I'm not saying you give in. The owners say X and you sign for X. It's a negotiation. But the idea that it's unreasonable to ask for a greater give back when now that we have more information and now it appears to be a probability, even likelihood, that they play baseball without fans in the stands. So you contract the season, you eliminate the fans, and oh yeah, by the way, all of those sponsors, first of all, like I don't think what people understand is it's not just the purchase of the seats and of the boxes, all of that in-stadium signage, unless it can be seen on a TV camera, you're going to have to give the money back or have a make good for years to come, which will make your books off in the future. So in this evolving situation, you have to be reasonable and say, we hear you. We're willing to make a deal. We want to make this work. We're not giving back all our money. We want to mutually absorb some of these losses and understand that long term, we're always going to play and there's always going to be baseball. We want to get back on the field. We don't want to sign some terrible deal and rush into it. But this idea of complaining about losing money for services that aren't rendered when you have plenty of people that are losing jobs simply because, well, scientists said you got to shut it down for the safety of yourself and the safety of others. And look, I get it. I get the idea of, hey, I could go out and I get the Rona and maybe I never get well. One, there isn't the statistical data that says it's a likelihood, right? At your age, in your physical condition, it's not a likelihood that you either one get sick and even less likely that it becomes some sort of lasting damage. And two, maybe most importantly, do you realize that you were never actually safe previously? Do you realize that? I'm not saying that the coronavirus was out there, but there's plenty of other things that were out there that we haven't limited people's access to a ballpark. I'm not even talking about firearms. I'm talking about viruses that are out there. Plenty of other things that can happen to any American, and we want to view it as freedom, but that freedom also does not protect us nearly as much as other countries. You know, SARS was out there. Other viruses were out there. We didn't have masks. We didn't have this sort of protection, and they were, as in some cases, more deadly. Granted, didn't touch down the United States, didn't have these sorts of numbers. But the idea that, hey, I'm not going back till I'm 100% safe, I hate to break it to you, bud. Once somebody goes into a school and shoots second graders, nobody is safe. I guess it's the assumption of safety. It's maybe the beauty to living in our country. But you are an entertainment-based enterprise, right? That's what, being a baseball player, you are an entertainer. And with any entertainer that has a live concert, if you can't have people in the building, you're going to take a loss. How great a loss? That's a negotiation. But this, I'm speaking the truths, yeah, from your perspective, Because what they could do is they could cut you guys all loose and end up in court and say, hey, there's this force majeure clause in everybody's contract, act of God. Put you out in the free agent market where you think, I'm going to get paid. And then you start to realize that all of those millionaire, billionaire owners that you think are just made of money are going to sit there and go like, hey, I'm $4 billion in the hole. I'm going to pay guys as little as possible. Just put any sort of product out there, get people in the stands, and get cash positive before I ever think about investing in a left-hand pitcher, no matter how good. And he's good. He's really good. How good he is. He ain't lying, bro. He's speaking the truth, bro. Here's the truth. You're not in a real business. It doesn't mean you have to somehow be happy to be there and take any sort of offer. But negotiating in public when the public is losing their job and, by the way, losing value in their 401k on a daily basis, probably not a smart play when you need that same public to wrap their arms around you if and when you return this season or whenever you return to playing baseball.